Theoretical aspect of corporate governance. At the end of this learning objective, you should be able to understand the main theories that underline the development of corporate governance that we are going to be discussing. Now, there are different theories of corporate governance which addressed different challenges of governance of businesses and of different organizations and of different corporations from time to time. We have the resource dependency theory, we have the political theory, we have the transaction theory, among others. But for the purpose of this study, we shall be focusing on two main theories, which is the shareholding perspectives, of which we will be discussing the separation of ownership agency theory as well as the myopic market model. And also we will be discussing the stewardship theory. Now, the issue of separation of ownership and control came to prominence after the recent scandals in some decades past, such as, some businesses such as the Enron, the Maxwell, among others, they actually experienced some scandals when it comes to management and ownership and control. And so this actually impacted businesses, policies, codes and principles and reports that were developed. And so we saw a report like the Cadbury report, and committees that were developed. We saw the Cadbury report, we saw the Ampere reports, among others. So all of this came about because of the crisis that happened. Now, we must not forget that a corporation is made up of two organs. We have the board of directors and we have the shareholders. So as countries industrialized and developed, it became very important that ownership and control of corporations must be separated. Also, joint stock companies, they were becoming complex and they were having very large shareholders. In separation of ownership and control, shareholders delegate control to the board of directors to run the company on their behalf. You see, the directors, who are the agent, they are responsible to the shareholders. And anything they do must be in the best interest of the shareholders. So shareholders, they normally play a very quiet role or a passive role in the day-to-day management of the company, while the directors usually own little percentage shares in a company. Along the line, we discovered that the separation of ownership and control led to conflict of interest between the directors and shareholders. The objective of the agent differed from the objective of the shareholders. So you discover that the enthusiasm and the zeal with which the agent will maximize or will watch over the shareholders' wealth differ, because most of the time they do it with their own consciousness. So when it comes to relationship between ownership and control between the agent and the shareholders, in some countries it's applicable, in some countries it's not applicable, because in some countries they are family-owned businesses, they are controlling shareholders, not a broad holder base. But it must be noted that in the last few years, there has been pressure on institutional shareholders who own shares to act more as owners and not just as holders of shares. Therefore, when we look at the separation theory or the separation of ownership and control theory, we discover that businesses have focused more on how they will ensure that the relationship between the board of directors and the shareholders are cemented. And so, there is the need for shareholders to act as owners, because there has been numerous instances of corporate collapses and scandals. And this has brought about a situation whereby money are being wiped out. Money or investment was lost, and shareholders lost their investment. So it is a theory that has called for improved transparency, better disclosure when it comes to international accounting standard, and to ensure that there is proper disclosure and transparency. The myopic market model. The myopic market model shares with principal agent theory the position that the purpose of corporations is to maximize shareholders' wealth. It is believed that the myopic market model is characterized by concern with short-term return on investment. It's also focused on short-term corporate profit, also short-term management performance. When it comes to stock market prices, it's also considered on a short term as well as expenditure. So the myopic model argues that while what is wrong with corporate governance is that the system encourages managers to focus on short-term performance by sacrificing long-term values and corporate competitiveness of the corporation. Now, the threat of hostile takeover produces an effect that distorts and distracts everything when it comes to value creation. Let's look at an example of loyal and diligent or committed managers who could be forced to take measures against hostile takeover rather than to enhance long-term performance. So, in other words, the myopic market model is not providing an environment in which shareholders and managers are encouraged to share long-term performance horizons. So, excess attention should not be given to short-term gains. Rather, it should be focused on the long-term gains in such an organization. The stewardship theory. The stewardship theory presents a model that is different when it comes to management. It is a theory that considers managers as good stewards who will act in the best interest of the owners. Who are stewards? In corporate governance, stewards are company executives, their managers, working for the shareholders, protecting their profit, protecting the shareholders, utilizing their investment. So stewardship theories argue that the managers or executives of a company are stewards of the owners, and both groups must also share common goals. Therefore, when it comes to too much controlling, the board should not do that. When it comes to playing a supportive role, this is the duty of the board. They must empower the executive. They must increase their potentials for higher performance. So stewardship theories is arguing that for relationships between board and executives to be smooth, to be successful, to be effective, to be productive, there must be training there must be mentoring, and there must be shared decisions. And this will help when it comes to protecting shareholders' wealth and maximizing shareholders' wealth as a result of the performance of the businesses or of the corporation. Why has corporate governance become so prominent today? Number one, the worldwide wave of privatization of the past 2 decades. The pension reform and the growth of private savings. The takeover wave of the 1980s. The deregulation and integration of capital market. And the recent corporate collapse and scandals, which has led to corporate governance gaining momentum. In LO1, we have also mentioned the benefits of good corporate governance, which is the growth effect, the stability effect, and the economic development effect. I want you to also refer to your core text and your supplementary text and your note, so you'll be able to grab as much knowledge as needed for this LO.